You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Zach Bechtold and Matt Franks. If you'd like to learn more about the Bearded Theologians, you can go online at beardedtheologians.com, where we have past podcasts, blogs, and a couple items for sale. So check us out, beardedtheologians.com. Thank you for listening, and enjoy this week's show. You're listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast, hosted by Matt Franks
and Zach Bechtold.
So this week on the podcast, the lectionary reading that we're looking at is from Exodus 32. The real reading is 32, 1 through 14. Zach and I were kicking around the idea of looking at this, and I think we're going to just land on verse 1 today. And so, Zach, I'll let you lead with that today.
Sure. And as you hear the beginning of this reading, remember that the Hebrew people, Moses has led them out of slavery in Egypt, and they've wandered the desert, and they come to kind of not this crossroad, but to this point where Moses is up on the mountain hearing from God, and the people are just waiting. So here, Exodus 32, verse 1, the people saw that Moses was taking a long time to come down from the mountain. They gathered around Aaron and said to him, "Come on, make us gods who can lead us. As for this man, Moses, who brought us up and out of the land of Egypt, we don't have a clue what has happened to him." And so, Matt, as you hear that and kind of know where they're coming from, and we know where they're going, but what kind of lands here quickly in this first verse?
It almost hurts too soon. When we think about what's going on in the life of the church and all the things that are going on right now. And we see the struggles that people are having, not being able to gather or not. I mean, however your church is practicing, there's definitely been those conversations of those false idols, and people are, people are freaking out that, people are going to, when we return to church, that they're not going to return, which in some ways that's going to be the case. I mean, studies have shown that it's about you're really going to have about 33% when you come back. And then people forget about the things that they're, falling off from and things. And the reality is like, that was already there. People are already doing that. And I struggle with like the gods that we make and the gods that we follow. And this is lowercase g, not the big G, the idols that we have in our lives. We all have them. Like, don't say you don't have one, because I know that's stupid. Everybody follows something else that's not God. We're all consumed by it in some way, shape, or form. And how we respond to that, that's kind of the difference. Like, do we allow it to consume our lives, to everything we do? I know Zach's probably heard this too, is that like, people can see your heart by what you're, by your pocketbook. And where we spend our time, energy, effort, and money really shows where we put where our heart is. And I do believe that. And I get that sense from this. Like, remember, they're on a journey. Like, it's not like they're just hanging out and they've been comfortable for a while. They are, they're part of a journey that, it's been it's not been an easy transition, and they're struggling. They're looking for something to cling to, hang on to. It sounds very familiar, eerily familiar, doesn't it?
Well, and I think that's the thing when we hear this and we look back to Moses and the folks wandering the desert. We talk about them right now, like, oh my God, look how much they complained and how much they whined and how easily they were to give up and just say, "Hey, Aaron, make us some gods, man. This dude, your brother Moses, has been gone for a while. We're clearly not sure when he's coming back. Do something about it." And when we paralleled that for today, how quickly have we done the same? And done it all in the name of God, right? We got to get back to this or to that. We have to be in this place or that place. And, we have quickly gone the way of the Israelites here, in just that anxious needing something to hold on to. And we know that as we read down in this verse, or maybe we don't know, right? If this is your first time, they go on to make the golden calf. And Moses comes down from the mountain with the commandments, and it's like, what is happening? And kind of loses his mind for a minute of like, we gotta and he has this conversation, this really hard conversation with God. God's like, I'm done. We're doing something different. But I think when we look at where we are today, especially now in the midst of a pandemic where things have just been different and chaotic and unsettling, how quick are we to turn and grab onto something that's familiar that isn't really God? And like Matt said, we often cling to things that look like God, whether it's a church building or a service or this or that. And yet, is it? What idols have we made for ourselves in the name that look a lot like a golden calf?
Well, and I think that's one of the things I've noticed is that like especially with all this going on in the world, we've forgotten the basic principle of loving our neighbor. And I'm not gonna say I'm perfect. I'm far from. I'm struggling myself. I'm trying not to be mad at people that I'm mad at because of decisions that they've made that have caused harm to other people. And we all, like I said this before, we all have idols, and so like we have to know what controls us, what keeps us away from God. What I always say butts. I usually say what butts in the way, because sometimes it's not the butt that gets in the way, it's our but. And sometimes that butt that gets in the way is the idol that is keeping us away truly from living in right relationship with God. And in order for us to have that in order for like us to have that right relationship, in order for us to grow in our faith, we have to let go of our butts. And once we do that, like there's definitely a space for transformation. And we see it time and time in scripture when, even in like when Jesus is making that invitation to discipleship, he's like, you got to let go of this. You got to let go of yourself. And that's kind of the idol that we hold on to, we cling to. Like,
I think that's exactly the idol we cling to, right? Because often when this scripture is preached, or anytime idolatry is preached, it's TV or someone else or money or fame, whatever, right? We put idolatry on something else rather than us. And I think one of the biggest places we get caught up in idolatry is making ourselves an idol, having to be right. We make that an idol big time. Justifying our actions, we make that an idol big time in our lives, but yet we don't look at it as such. And I think that's a mistake. And I think we miss places where we have missed the invitation to die to self, right? To leave all that behind, because we want to cling on to ourselves. And I think that's something that we miss when we talk about idolatry, is looking at ourselves first rather than placing blame on everything else.
I also want to push a little more and say that we have idols in the church.
Oh, sure.
And those of you that have been in church life know what those are, or knows what they can be.
Yeah.
They can be those pictures that are behind the wall, or like the whatever. And like, like at one time they probably served a purpose, but now they probably don't. And like, can we let go of that to move forward and grow more? Or are we going to cling to this thing and say that like, we're not going to let go of this because, well, at one time it served a purpose and it no longer does anymore, but yet we're not going to let it go. And that, I think that even in our personal lives, we have those things. Like we cling to a moment. Like I can't tell you the number of times, and I know this too, because you worked in campus ministry. Like people long for that like summer camp moment, and like that's a moment. That's not something that's not something that defines our discipleship. That's not something that like it's a moment, but like it's not something we should be held. Like that's not something we should always strive for, because that's just not. That's not necessarily a healthy way of doing things. And that we have to move forward, and we have to let go, and we have to grow. And a lot of that takes time and self-reflection, and just being honest about who we are and about where we've fallen and where we're not focusing. And, I've been preaching on these last 4 weeks since we had that conversation with Ryan Kennedy about the Serenity Prayer, and I'm using it within the context of Philippians. And I've challenged my congregation, kind of like Niebuhr did in asking him to pray. And so every time we have a meeting or something, I pray that prayer, whether it's the beginning or the end. And to be honest with you, like one of the things I've noticed in this time is it's helping me surrender some things I need to let go of. And some of those things are idols. Some of those things I held on to and cling to because, well, I felt like they were good, but in some ways they weren't. In some ways they were, some ways they weren't. But
and that's the thing. We cling to things that make us comfortable, right? That make us feel warm and welcome. And there's nothing wrong with that until it becomes we can't move that. We can't change that. And that's where I say it begins with ourselves, is that inward looking, so that we can see beyond of the physical objects we have made idols, right? And we can let those things go, but we have to let go of being right or justified or righteous or, whatever first, or else we can't see, we can't see the forest through the trees, right? Yeah. And you're right. We have to be able to humble ourselves in that way and say, you know what? I didn't let this thing change that it needed to be changed because it made me comfortable. Didn't make anybody else comfortable, but it made me comfortable. Or, I put a lot more stock into this than I should have. And it's okay to step away from that. It's okay to change that. But yet we have to do that work here first within us to then move out beyond that. And then not look at other people and start pointing the finger at them, right? Yeah. Help walk each other through, like you said, loving our neighbor. Part of that's walking each other through this process of going, where are we today? And I think it all comes back to that request of, hey, Aaron, come on, make us gods that can lead us. Yeah. These people just simply want a leader. And we can identify with that in this time of uncertainty. We want somebody just to pop up on TV or the radio or in a podcast and say, hey, do it like this. Okay, we'll do it this way.
Or you're doing everything okay. It's okay. Mm-hmm. You're doing well. Keep going.
Well, that's what we need to hear. But what we want to hear is somebody saying, here's the plan. Yeah. Here's the thing. And we're down at the bottom of the mountain wondering when Moses is going to come back.
Yeah. And so I think it's a good place to land today is to, one, be in an attitude of self-reflection and find out what are some things that are keeping you from growing. Name those idols and find ways of letting go or maybe repurposing them to do good. There are some things you can repurpose. I'm a big fan of repurposing things, not because it's the hip cool thing on the DIY shows, but like it's part of my heritage and culture to repurpose things. And so like, that's something I really have embraced, is repurposing things for greater good. And so, find ways that you can repurpose those things, kind of like what Zach did with the Jesus wall there. Some of those pictures are repurposed from other places with permission. And so, find a way to wrestle with that this week and be okay with that. And it's okay. Like, growth is painful, but there's also fruit at the end. And so be open to that change. We want to encourage you to go to our website at beardedtheologians.com and check out all of our great content and all the things we have out there. You can buy gear. You can connect with us, get to know us a little bit better. Share us on social medias, through Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. Don't forget to hit subscribe to wherever you listen to this podcast, whether it's on YouTube, whether you're watching us live and in person, or you're watching or you're listening in your car through a podcast app. Please hit subscribe and also rate us. Those ratings, give us 5 stars, and then you can bash us all you want to. That helps get our name out there a little bit better, and we just encourage you to do that for us. And so for the Bearded Theologians, I'm Matt Franks.
I'm Zach Bechtold. Thanks for checking us out.
First, guys, I want you to subscribe and like this video. And push that thumbs up.
Thank you for listening to the Bearded Theologians podcast. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share on all social media outlets. You can check out old episodes and more information at beardedtheologians.com. Thanks for checking us out.